Starting to record the meeting, and I would like to start by introducing myself. John will introduce himself, and it would be nice for everybody to introduce themselves. So I'm Laura Myers. I am a longtime chair, now co-chair of UNNC's Planning and Zoning Committee. I am an elected board member of the UNNC. I live in Angeles Vista, and I am also serving currently as president. John?
I am John Arnold. Most of you know me. I live in Jefferson Park. I've been on the UNNC board for 14 years now, and co-chair with Laura for planning and zoning. I'm an architect. I specialize in multifamily housing, and I also subspecialize in affordable housing. So between Laura and I, we have a broad but dangerous knowledge range of
Yeah.
planning and zoning issues.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Demetrius and Chris.
My name's Chris Carlson. I live in Western Heights. I've been a long time member of the UNNC governing board, and I'm the current area 4 rep.
Okay, I'm gonna ask.
Everyone needs to mute themselves if they aren't speaking. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
So I'm particularly interested in issues about not just preservation of existing homes, but also being able to grow affordable and sustainable housing as the city's needs demand.
Okay. And Dem.
Well, I've lived here for 30 odd years. I'm with Chris, obviously, and I like the idea of maintaining community and keeping the area as livable as possible, right up into the city.
Okay. Brittany, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Brittany. I've been living in the area for almost 3 years now. Also currently urban planning student and working at a community organization.
Okay.
Brittany, where are you a student?
I'm studying at UCLA, but I live in this area, so the virtual learning has been good.
Okay. If I'm pronouncing this correctly, Constantine. Now you're muted.
Good evening. Sorry about that. I'm juggling my little 1-year-old. Lived in the area for about a little over 6 years now. I work in housing policy, more focused at the state level, but focused in on how we solve this housing crisis, but also in a way that's equitable, that also redresses the decades long of racist housing policy and redlining that has now plagued the state and created a space where we can't afford for anybody to move here and take care of the folks that want to come to California, who's raising kids in California for our children to be able to have a place to live as well. So just I'm excited to be here and listen in and learn, and thank you all for the civic engagement that you all have here in the community.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Michael, are you still here? Maybe not. Jasmine, did you want to introduce yourself? We're kind of just going around and introducing ourselves.
I'm here.
Or Michael first.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I've been in and out of my office, and I just put it on mute. I had the volume turned up so I could hear what was going on, but I'm back in my chair. Good evening, everyone. So if you don't know me, I'm Michael Kimbrough. I'm on the Avenues UNCC chair. I also am a private real estate developer and land development consultant. So I've joined the committee really to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening. I live here in the Avenues, and that's it. Not much else to say.
Thank you. Jasmine now. Sorry.
No worries. Hi, Jasmine Johnson. I've lived here a little over 3 years now. I work for an environmental justice and health policy research and advocacy organization, and I'm an at-large member of the UNNC.
So thank you. I'm going to share the screen and with our agenda. So can people see the shared screen? Because I can never tell if other people can see my
Yes.
screen.
Yeah.
It's booting up now.
All right.
There it is. Yes,
There it
I can
is.
see it.
So we've already sort of started on the agenda. The first item is welcome, call to order, introductions. We've done that. And approval of the agenda. This requires a little explanation that some of you have heard many times, but UNNC, when we established our system of committees, of the standing committees, what we decided was we would only appoint chairs and as needed co-chairs of our committees, but otherwise anyone who's participating in a committee at a given committee meeting, any stakeholder is considered for that meeting a member of the committee. And what that means is you can fully participate, make motions, and vote. Our actions at this committee are recommendations to our governing board. The governing board is elected, and so when we get to governing board, only the actual governing board members may make motions and vote. But we have fully participatory committees. The general idea is to increase stakeholder participation and to give our stakeholders a voice in the city. So with that said, the agenda you have in front of you is not quite complete, so I will explain. We do have public comments. Yes. The monitoring conditions on development projects. Yes, this is all good. The item 4, new initiatives to preserve the city's RSO rent stabilized housing units. Because tomorrow night our board is voting on all of the committee's mission and goal statements, we may or may not need to update the planning and zoning committee's mission and goal statement. I will post it, but it's number 6, follow up to previous cases, ENS and old business. Between the time of posting this agenda and now, there was in effect news that came up yesterday, and luckily there's still time to weigh in. But we had looked at our last meeting, the proposed new fee schedule that for the planning department had proposed, as they have to every few years, proposed new set of fees for every single kind of transaction one might do with the planning department, apply for a variance, I mean, just all kinds of things. But we had looked at the 2 categories that our neighborhood council would be most interested in. One would be any and all fees related to historic preservation for HPOZ type applications, Mills Act, Historic Cultural Monument, all of those. And we'd also looked at appeal fees, and they were all kept low. They were not full cost recovery because the planning department recognizes that most, where you have individual residents applying for things, not developers. We should
Laura,
keep...
you're stealing your own thunder for the item.
Right.
Yep.
Sorry. Anyway, what happened is that the city CAO, which is, I forgot what CAO is.
City budget.
The people who look at the city's money issued a report that went to council yesterday, but then it didn't happen. That said, that's not the path to follow. That everything has to be full cost recovery, and it escalated the fees triple and quadruple. So since we had already dealt with this, but with a different outcome, this is news, as I said, so we're going to talk about that in item 6. So with that adjustment, I need a motion, meaning to consider the new proposed fee schedule. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda with item 6 amended to revisit the city's proposed fee schedules for permit applications and
I
such.
second it.
Okay, so I'm gonna drop well, John, you can follow. I can't see anybody, but
Hold on, my participant screen went away.
all right.
Oh, there
So
it is.
I'm just, everybody may vote. I vote yes. I'm raising my hand.
Yep.
All in favor?
If you raise your hand virtually, that would be great. Or just unmute and say, there we go. I got
Virtually
Jazz.
or
Aye.
Yep. So I heard
heard
Jasmine,
an
yes.
aye.
Brittany, yes. Constantine, yes. Michael and I haven't heard
Okay.
Demetrius.
Turn your video on, honey.
Motion passes. Here we go.
Yes, motion passes. There we go.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comments on anything not on this agenda. You make a public comment, and that is limited. What did I put on the agenda? To 1 to 2 minutes per speaker if you have any comments on anything not on this agenda.
Laura, is it worth it to talk about what we about the Murphy oil site at all?
Oh yeah, that's an update. You may as well.
Yeah, Chris, do you want to take it? You were there.
Yeah, it's a little premature maybe because, but we can announce a process that's underway. We had a meeting with representatives from the oil company that owns the Murphy and other oil sites in the city, and the property that's on 27th Street
Yep.
at the base of the topographic drop from the Murphy drill site was developed with input from UNNC to be a green space. It's landscape. One of our neighbors contributed the landscape design, and it's been a gated green space. The company is exploring ways to open that space to the community on some basis. They're looking at various sort of pilot programs. It might be on a variable event basis, but they are looking and talking to their insurers and the elements to see if they can make that green space available to the larger community. Now, it would not be a park per se, and it wouldn't be an active play area because there's topography. It's not really well designed for, say, ball sports and stuff, but it could be a place where there would be outdoor gatherings, maybe music. It could have things like maybe Tai Chi and yoga, but they're open to trying to make that happen. And we met with some gentlemen, some individuals from CD10, and there was generally a lot of good brainstorming and very supportive discussions. So the next step is we'll be hearing back from EMB Resources as to kind of the boundaries that they feel that they might be able to support. Is there anything more you want to add,
No.
John?
I think that's great. And they've already the representative from the oil company has already contacted me. I offered energy and ideas regarding architecture and landscape, and he's already contacted me. So that's good.
I'm going to call on myself. So why we're talking about this at a planning and zoning committee meeting, as opposed to, say, recreation and parks committee meeting, is that all of this is the result of a long ago and far away conditional use permit related to the drilling site. So the recent, meaning the first conditional use permit's 1962, the more recent conditional use permit, probably 15 years old, envisioned eventually opening the park-like space to being a somewhat of a park space. So that is why we were having the meeting at all, is because of the conditions in the conditional use permit. And because UNNC was involved.
The current owner is like third or fourth generation from when there was the changes that happened a few years ago. So
Fifth.
I'm not sure what their motivation is, but it sounds like oil company makes a little bit of good and gesture to the neighborhood to be a good neighbor. So what we're investigating that, but it's a positive thing for the neighborhood because as everyone knows, we are park poor.
Okay. So that was more than a minute or two, but there were three of us talking. Are there any other public comments on items not on this agenda? Because we probably could have handled that under number 6 also. Okay. Oh, actually, I do have a public comment. So sorry. We have had a problem, and apparently other parts of town also have had a problem, but it's gotten to the point where there are way too many fires, most often, unfortunately, set by, I imagine, cold, homeless folks, either in their own encampments or in squatting situations inside our residences. So we have the third such fire in a couple of years, just probably destroyed another duplex in our general area. And so it's something we're going to start talking about. I mean, what can be done? And we have two issues, but the biggest issue is that the fire department itself is becoming overwhelmed with two things: transporting COVID patients to hospitals and with fires at homeless encampments and homeless. I don't know what would be the other phrase for when people are squatting in a house, but I mean it's
occupying vacant
vacant
properties.
But without heat. So I mean they're presumably setting the fires to warm themselves up, not vandalize. It's not vandalism, but the result is the same. So you're likely to see some initiatives going forward because it's happening all over town. Okay. Anything else, or let's move on. So the next item, and then John, I'm gonna, do you want to take this one? Monitoring conditions on development projects. I can post the specific one at Crenshaw and Jefferson. I have that document, but do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So usually what happens when projects are developed in the city, they usually have some sort of entitlement, whether it's a public entitlement or ministerial, and that those entitlements usually contain conditions of approval, and oftentimes they're boilerplate. Sometimes they're specific, but oftentimes whether they're specific or boilerplate, they include improvements to the public way. And what those improvements generally are sidewalks, curbs, tree planting. And the issue here is tree planting. And there's nothing, once they get their permit and the tree is planted, everything is closed and everyone goes on their way and the tree dies. So we are looking at ways to involve permanent support for the trees, permanent support of trees, and how we might get that to be a reality. And the poster child for this is the corner of Crenshaw and Jefferson, which is the Union Bank 99-cent store, which has two beautiful tree wells that have no trees in them because they died.
Actually, sadly,
So
the count is 8, John. 8 tree wells.
Oh,
it's a lot.
There's 8. I know.
8 of them, 1 tree, so anyway, and 8 vacant wells.
So there you go. The landscaping in that property generally looks good on the property, but in the public way, there's no way. So what we get is a shadeless tree well stumped landscape full of trash. So, and there are ways we can help that to stop. And once, a lot of trees, especially if they're native, once they get going after 5 or 10 years with proper care, they're good to go. To wit, the trees along Expo that Elizabeth Fenner, a community member, was involved in planting, which is Palo Verdes, are doing fantastically along Expo line.
So how this came up is that UNNC's environmental committee, which includes has incorporated our longstanding trees committee. They're volunteers, about 4 people, I think, basically has mapped all of our commercial corridors, as many as they identified, of tree wells, meaning there were trees there, and these are cut in the concrete square tree wells without trees up and down our corridors. I think the count now is 75 or so. So on Jefferson, Western, Crenshaw, Pico, Washington is not.
Washington.
Well, Washington, Washington is another sad case because UNNC, working with the city, planted 100 trees, and I think there's 40 left. So not Venice, because the city just planted trees on Venice. But in any case, it came up that they're doing this big survey of the tree wells and photographed the 8 at this. It goes from Bronson to Jefferson, and then from Jefferson north on
Isn't the
Crenshaw.
discussion not so much about the number of trees, but the process that
Right.
we encumber developers to maintain and be responsible for those trees if it's a condition?
Well, it's 2 things at this point, because we're doing this other project and trying to find monies to plant more trees and to pay for watering and maintenance for 1 or more years. The question becomes as well, should we be planting their trees? Or should they, where they're missing, should they be planting their own trees? Who should pay for the watering and maintenance? I mean, so it's kind of a immediate question.
Decision needs to be made, yes.
Right.
I would make a motion that they have to, that we encumber them to have to replace and maintain whatever trees were required as a condition of their development.
Okay.
I would second that.
We have a motion.
I'm trying to write it unless you're writing it.
I didn't. I know it's my job. Hold on.
Sorry, you write it.
Chris, can you reiterate that? My fingers are on the keyboard now.
The motion is that if trees were part of a condition for the developer to have that site as finished, that they must maintain the tree or replace and maintain a tree if a tree fails. They are, because the trees are part of what they were encumbered to do, and that responsibility should stay with the property.
The developer of the property should be responsible for maintaining the tree for at least 5 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need a time thing. I was gonna say 10, but
Well,
5 is
here's
pretty adequate.
so what happens after 10 years? I would say 10, but what happens after 10? If it runs
Well,
with
then
the
tree
land.
is usually big enough to live by itself and become a city issue.
It becomes a city issue. I would agree. But
Right, but okay, so I'm sorry, are we that they are to maintain the tree for a minimum of 10 years, but what happens if they're all dead? I mean, I'm going to make an assumption in the one case that we are looking at, that either they were never planted or for some reason, but it doesn't make sense, they were removed.
Laura, I think in the specific case, the very first thing should be to reach out to the owner of the building and remind them of the condition and ask them if they're willing to honor the condition.
Without us doing anything.
But let them know that we are addressing other tree wells in the area, and we could coordinate with them maybe for the planting. That it could,
Well, that's not quite the same motion.
I think we're mixing apples and oranges here.
Right.
We're mixing 2 things. We want to deal with trees that are a requirement of a building permit or a building development.
Mm-hmm.
That's the process. We want to establish what you do in that case and what the onus is on the developer or owner of the property. The second issue is, what do you do with failed trees that we have now?
Well, I think there's a third issue, but I'm being a little guesswork here. They're all gone except for one.
Well, that's all right. We know that.
No, what I mean
We
is,
want to have to decide what we want to do relative to trees which are no longer anybody's responsibility, apparently, because we can't go back and hold somebody's feet to the fire. We only can do that by asking them nicely, but there's nothing in a condition. So we have conditions going forward on new development, and then we have to deal with what we deal with failed development.
okay, I'm sorry, but the one we're talking about did have a condition of having all of these trees, and they were to have 30-foot canopies upon maturity. It was very specific.
Yes,
So
but
I
how
think that-
long ago was this condition imposed?
Well, that's the point. 2011.
So
So
what
it's
I'm,
10
what
years
I'm
ago.
wondering, so I think it's about enforcement. So I'm typing something that wasn't said, but maybe enforcement will be under covenants, fees.
Right.
What's a fee called when you put it in a trust?
A trust.
Encumbered fee.
No, an escrow,
What?
Escrow.
an escrow account.
They usually bond them, a completion
A
bond.
bond, a bond.
But that would have meant they were planted, but there's no guarantee they would survive. I mean,
How do I raise my
Unless
hand?
the
Michael,
bond.
Michael Kimbrough would like to say something.
How do I raise my hand?
Well, I don't know, but go ahead.
Okay.
There's only 7 of us here. It can be casual.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, the developer, it's incumbent, and I understand what John is saying. It's incumbent on the developer to be responsible for the trees. And is there a way to enforce irrigation within the parkway as part of that
Right.
from Bureau of Engineering?
There often is as part of the plans, but again, when a tree dies, I'm not sure, or the head gets broken off and it's in public way. There's all these things that there's no incentive for people to say, oh,
Exactly. I agree with you, John.
the head broke off, whatever.
We have no leverage. We have no leverage on the dead trees with the developer or owner of the parcel. That's the problem, as I see it.
So let me read back what I got before I hit send, so I don't, because once I hit send, it locks in.
Right.
Chris Carlson moves to require developers to maintain all trees that are required under conditions of development approval, and be required to replace trees as necessary for a minimum of 10 years after the finalization of occupancy for the project. Enforcement will be under covenants, fees, bonds. And what was the last one we said? What was the, Chris, what did you say before Laura said bonds?
An escrow. account.
Escrow or escrow. An escrow account. Does that sound right, Chris?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. Now I'm going to hit send. And there we go for everyone to see. So I think.
So John, I am not looking at anything right now because what I'm actually trying to see is if I can, I'm on the internet trying to see if I can track when the trees disappeared through Google Street View.
Yeah.
So, so if you can look at hands and see if anybody's got other comments.
I see no other hands.
Uh-oh, because I can't do this real fast. Yeah, again, my concern is it is 10 years long enough?
I'm sorry, what, Laura?
Well, it's 10 years long enough. We have this one situation where we certainly can see that the trees are gone.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they were there because there's tree wells. If they were never planted, there wouldn't be the tree wells, right?
That's not, no, people could have not failed to complete, they could have made the tree wells and not put the plants in.
So what are we trying to accomplish?
That-
We're trying to get them.
That actually can't happen because if it's a condition, they can't get their certificate of occupancy unless the inspector's asleep on the job, which usually doesn't happen. They have to have everything cleared to get that, and that's important to them.
There was a good chance there were trees.
There's a good chance there was trees, yeah. So, if a tree dies at year 9.5 and they plant it and it dies at year 10, that seems like it's getting into the lower percentages of what would happen, but 10 years sounds right to me. especially if it's a covenant that runs with the land and you have to make sure that the tree is living at year 10. And if it's not,
John, is there any way you can put in any verbiage to make sure that the trees are native to our, drought tolerant?
that's how I would say there's mixed opinions about whether everything has to be native, and there are limited native trees, or oaks and Balverdes, but I think drought tolerant and or native. Would that work, Michael?
Sure.
Okay.
Just to ensure that in the event of the absence of irrigation,
Sure.
the tree has an opportunity to survive on its own prior to year 10.
So, Chris, it sounds like we have a friendly amendment to say all trees shall be drought tolerant.
Or suitable for the climate.
Okay, that's good. That's a scientist's way to say it, which that I like. Trees shall be drought tolerant.
Climate suitable.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm
That's
sorry.
native or otherwise climate suitable.
Suitable. I like that.
Climate suitable.
And Chris, you accept that?
I accept that.
Okay, and who's the seconder on that?
I'll second.
Okay, so Michael, so we're going to add that as amendment.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm just amending my rude remark about them before. The requirement was 8 trees, they still have 2, so it's 6 that are gone. But again, I'm concerned, I mean, this is just one instance, but I'm concerned now about the 10 years, only because we are really lucky in a sense that, we have a lot of development proposals before us, I mean, that have been approved, of more projects to be constructed, especially on Crenshaw Boulevard. There's 3 approved projects now. And also there's 2 on Western, right? So 5 big projects on a combination of Western and on Crenshaw, and then several in the Exposition Place, 10th Avenue, that area. So we know that developer is a tree hugger, the latter one, and will plant trees where he can, although he's concerned about planting trees where he's not the property owner. I don't think it's a good idea, this is my opinion, to say at least for 10 years, because it takes 10 years to become mature. So 10 years down the road, I would like our children to be able to see those trees and not be in the situation we are right now at Crenshaw and Jefferson, where 10 years in, 6 of 8 trees are gone.
So
But that's because what we're putting in place wasn't in place, Laura.
Yeah. So I think after 10 years, it's fair.
They let it survive, unless a truck runs into them.
Yeah. I think after 10 years, I mean, the cities are in city property, the trees are in city property. The city does eventually take responsibility. So I'm not sure how you continue that responsibility with a property owner. I mean, all property owners should be taking care of their public right of way, but I know.
Well, what about the irrigation? Well, shouldn't they mandatorily have irrigation?
So maybe that's an addition, and irrigation maintained in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Chris?
It should require, standard planting would require 2 root bubblers per tree well.
Yep.
And so that should be part of the condition. If you're requiring a tree well, there should be double root bubblers in each tree well to irrigate the tree.
So I'm going to add, since you just said that, Chris, I'm going to add to your own motion, irrigation shall be maintained in perpetuity with the property.
Thank you. I accept the friendly amendment.
Thank you very much, because I think that would help.
That's good. And so Laura, what happens with this delightful little motion?
Well, if we pass this motion, we move it right to tomorrow night's governing board.
And then where does it get sent?
I don't know. Where it would get sent, well, the governing board motion would need to be, or maybe we should just do it now, with a letter to be sent to the council office and the planning director of planning and the manager of building and safety, whatever the title is, letter to be approved by executive committee.
So, I'm gonna say, letter to be sent. to
Since there's
appropriate-
no way we're gonna have a letter ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, agents, recommends a letter be sent to appropriate city agencies, including planning.
Building and safety, and
yeah,
also the council office.
And the council office. And should we include exhibits with this letter about recent developments that are now eyesores because this was not in place?
Oh, sure. What just say examples.
Of
Including
covenants that
exhibits.
have not been, are failing to be met.
Right.
Exhibits of relatively recent.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, we haven't done a full survey of all developments that may have failed to meet that obligation. You know, I mean, this came to us from a different angle, which was, you know, a different committee's efforts. But sure, examples would be fine. I mean, the main thing is I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I mean, we could, if the board wants the letter to be approved by the board a month from now, I mean, time is not necessarily of the essence on this particular item. But, you know, it's more efficient to just let an executive committee approve the letter, but it doesn't really matter if the board decides not.
Okay.
Okay.
So I added that this motion is issued forward via a letter. We're recommending a letter be sent to appropriate city agencies, including planning, LADBS, and council office, including exhibits of relatively recent developments where required trees have died and not been replaced, or where trees have not thrived because of improper care, maintenance, or water.
All right,
Chris?
perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, I call this vote. I think it's a non-controversial.
Okay.
Anyone have any comments?
Oh, are you calling the vote? That's for comments.
I'd say let's call the vote.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would say either if you're on screen, raise your hand. If you're not on screen, please raise your virtual hand.
I can't raise my virtual hand. I don't know how.
Michael, you might try hitting *9 and see if that works.
*9.
Yeah, on your phone.
I'm not
See if
on
that-
my phone.
Yeah, on your phone on the keyboard, try doing *9, and if that doesn't work, I'll tell you if it works. We'll see.
I'm on my computer.
Then go down to the bottom, Mike.
Oh,
And you should see a little bar that says share screen. Participants is one called reactions.
Ah, okay.
See the
I was
raised
pressing
hand?
participants. Got it.
So
Thank you.
hit raise. There you go. You got
Hey,
clap.
man.
Okay, we got unanimous. I saw a hand from everybody.
okay, good. All right, moving
Um,
on. So this next item, and as I mentioned earlier, way earlier in the meeting, we've got multiple things we could show you, but I don't know if we need to. Next, item 4 is there are new initiatives at City Council to talk about preserving the city's RSO, rent stabilized housing units. So there's at least 3 and maybe more council motions attempting to address all of this. But the big deal is that the city attorney has sort of weighed in a way that is the opposite of what UNNC has now been discussing for a while. So let me cue up the background and then we can go from there. We have seen a lot of what are called TOC projects, transit-oriented communities projects, and to get the incentives, a developer would there's a calculated schedule of how many affordable units need to be included in a project in order for that project to be given incentives that include the ability to build even more units, have a higher height, have a greater FAR, and some other potential incentives like reduced setbacks, reduced open space, but they have to provide a certain number of affordable units. What we have seen, unfortunately, is in some instances, more rent stabilized units have been demolished than affordable units have been approved. And I think UNNC has had numerous conversations about the broad concept of it should be that in addition to those affordable units that are required for TOC, the RSO or rent stabilized units ought to also be replaced so that we don't end up with a net loss. Because most of the RSO units that are proposed for or actually demolished de facto are affordable because they're older buildings with lower rents, so that they are serving as affordable housing, even if they are not technically on the list of housing department affordable housing. So
Well, wait a minute. I think you've now commingled two things.
Yes, I am.
But just a minute. There's affordable housing, which the city may or may not define, and then there's rent stabilized.
Correct.
Ordinance, and they can overlap, but they're not necessarily the same.
They're not the same. On a practical basis, when you look at buildings being proposed for demolition, they tend to be older buildings with lower rents. They do not tend to be high rent buildings. I mean, there's no 100% anything, but in general terms, they tend to be a 1910. One was built in 1910 at 1310, a lot of 10s in that, 1310 South St. Andrews. I mean, a lot of the buildings that have been or proposed to be demolished date from 100 years ago or more, and were not necessarily in good condition. And the RSO units, on a de facto basis, the individuals or families who were paying rent were paying very low rents.
Right. But those are RSO.
Those are yes, Chris, they are RSO.
They need to be replaced.
Correct. Under SB 330, they are to be replaced.
But that doesn't. But then any incentive, additional TOC development, whether it's massing or whatever, requires additional affordable units.
Well, that's what most of us. Yeah, most of us think that. And I will say that I attended a very long session at the citywide Plan Check LA, which is the neighborhood councils coalitions for, planning matters, land use matters. And that's what almost everybody thinks ought to be. And that's what we think the legislative intent of SB 330 was. So far, so good.
Yep.
The LA city attorney has weighed in to say no. That in the city attorney's opinion, if they need to replace 9 units RSO and they're offering up 5 units affordable, then they only need to do 4 more so that it's an even number. So it's still 9. And that's new because up until the effective date of SB 330, we were losing units. We had fewer being approved. But that the legislative intent in many people's opinion, and that's what I am proposing that UNNC take on as our opinion, is to have replaced the RSO units and give us new affordable units if you're asking for all of the incentives for a TOC or other density bonus project. This would not, I mean, that would be it. Now, obviously, something like John might design for a client 100% affordable, well, in and of itself, even if they demolish 9 units and they're building 30, I'm making up numbers, there are 30, now we have 30 affordable units, and that it suffices. But when these other kind of TOC units where mostly they're building market rate, we're losing RSO. So that's my concern. So
Laura, what would be, if you had to recommend that one of us makes a motion, are we writing a letter? And because what I heard was
no, we would be doing community impact statement on those council, on the council motions.
Okay, so write a community impact statement on
addressing those 3 council motions.
Is there a council motion pending?
Yes, there are 3 at the moment. They're on the agenda. There are 3 three sort of related. It's hard. It's very confusing, but it's here. I'm going to just post it in the chat. And it's really hard to keep track of which one is addressing which item. You know.
So far, I have UNC Governing Board. Right, not that anyone's made this motion. I'm just.
Yeah. Well,
UNC Governing Board write a community impact
statement.
Community impact statement in support of the 3 pending council motions that address
the retention of RSO housing.
Retention of.
In addition to bonus affordable housing or affordable housing commitments for extra bonus development.
So,
right. Well, I mean, in other words, John, yes, what John is, these 3 council motions address, among other things, the retention of RSO housing. UNNC's opinion is that, and then what Chris said.
That we retain the RSO unit count in addition to any affordable units that are required for the extra developmental bonus
incentives. Right. And we don't need to say just TOC, John, because there's multiple different, as you know, different kinds of, different kinds of density bonus projects. So it would be density bonus projects.
Yeah. And the rationale is, if they were to develop what they're allowed to develop, they would have to replace those RSO units. And by giving them extra developmental rights in exchange for the affordable units, then they have to put both into the equation, or they're getting a big something for nothing.
Right. And again, what was pretty much said at plan check. I'm sorry, I've got this so buried in a desk full of paper, and since this goes back almost a month, but what pretty much was stated by the people who follow legislation in Sacramento as well as local is that it was clearly the legislative intent not to end up with fewer affordable units.
Yeah. So my only issue with that is that generally, aside from many historical issues, units that were built in 1905 are generally substandard. Replacement units are generally superior for safety, health, light, air, sprinklers, accessibility, all those, HVAC, sustainability, all those things are better in a new unit. So so say there's 8 units, RSO units, do they have to replace them in kind with the same type of unit? And then that starts to become, so if they have to do 8 plus 4 is 12, and then the whole project is 48. I know for a fact that 25% of a project, if it's affordable, is untenably, is a pro forma buster for a developer. So I would think that if there's 8 units and they're required to have 4, that it's the lower of the two, the higher of the two numbers has to be maintained. So if there's 8 units, you have to put at least 8 units. And my problem is with the 1 plus 8 plus 4 is 12, because that starts to decentivize housing, period, even in replacement housing.
Yes, but John, but the converse is the community needs to, and then Constantine has his hand up, so I'll call him next. The converse of what you just said is, we who live in multifamily zones, like me, we're beginning to find ourselves having to put up with projects that are way too tall, way out of character, no open space, no setbacks. People lost their housing. They may not be able to continue to live in Los Angeles. So I'd rather make it harder for the developer than to end up with people on the street or booted out of the city. I mean, I understand your point about where the lack of tenability. Whatever.
So, Constantine has his.
Yes, he does. So let's let Constantine weigh in here. And tell us if we're
I
pronouncing,
have a clarifying.
just tell us if we're pronouncing your
You're
name.
nailing it. Perfect.
Okay.
You're nailing it. It's Constantine. Perfect. Question I have is the RSO units, do they have to be at an affordable rent, or is it just more a matter of those units the rent can't be raised
No,
past what that,
so you're talking about the
you
new,
understand what I'm saying?
yeah, so you're talking about the new units?
Like, can they come in at a higher rent, but then that
No.
rent can raise up beyond what that rent stabilization, or they have to be at the same affordable level of rent based on
It's a
income?
good point. It's not based on the current rent of those units. It's based on, usually developers go for the lowest medium income because that requires the fewest amount of units. So what they do is they take, if they sign up for 60% of average median income, it's called AMI, then the rent is adjusted for that based on 2021 levels, whatever the year is. So what that will usually means for very low income is that a 2-bedroom unit might be $600 or $700 a month new, but it doesn't have any correlation to what those tenants were paying on that time. And then those are stabilized for 55 years, and they can only go up so much based on a formula that the housing department puts out.
Yeah, but those are the new affordable units. I think,
Yes.
Constantine, is your question about
Right,
the
so-
replacement
so
RSO
what-
units? There's two
Right. So what I'm
categories here.
saying is, can the RSO units not be part of the affordable units, right? Like so, for example, the builder, I understand about the inclusionary zoning to get, I mean, the density bonus to get the affordable units. But so, for example, if you have the 8 bonus and density bonus units that you have to have that to achieve that density, the affordable units, right? That density bonus that you want, right? So 8 of those are the affordable. The other, you're replacing 5 RSO units to get, I mean, the density bonus to get units. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
So I don't know if
right? So 8 of those are the
RSO,
affordable. The other, and you're replacing RSO, they are part of that new. Does that make, do you understand?
yeah,
Yeah.
your audio is a little, I'm sorry.
I have
Does that
the
make, do you understand what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, your audio is a little muddled, but what I heard was you're asking if the RSO units, the new ones, have the same rent as the ones that were taken away. And I don't know if there's
you
a,
the
is that
answer
what you were
if you
saying?
like it.
No. Your audio is really choppy, Constantine, by the way. Every third word is a little chunked up.
Right, but here, I'm trying to, he's partly choppy because I'm trying to break through here. I have the answer. I'm reading
Good.
the report. It's not entirely clear, but hang on. I was reading the report and then it just disappeared from my screen. Oh, here we go. So what the report to the City Council, Plum, Planning and Land Use Management, and Housing Committees says. So this may be a city attorney interpretation. But it says SB 330 requires that, quote, protected units be replaced. So that's what we would call RSO units, per the requirements of some law. So there's this SB 330 says protected units refer to units occupied by a lower income household, an affordable rent restricted unit, or a unit subject to the RSO. So that's 3 different categories. Replacement units must have the same number of bedrooms and be subject to the same price control, rent stabilization ordinance requirements as the units they replaced.
Yeah.
In addition, any unit that was occupied by a lower income household in the prior 5 years must be replaced with a unit occupied by the same household or a lower income household. If the income of the tenants, meaning the prior tenants, is unknown. Then the state law says to assume a percentage of AMI based on the percentage of lower income renters in the city as a whole. Currently 70%, and I think we need to absorb that. So apparently renters in general are in this city are 70% of them are renters whose income is below AMI. I don't know where they got that number, but that's astonishing. Residential dwelling units that were Ellised within the past 10 years must also be replaced. That's a different issue. So, so I read this, now I'm interpreting as that what John fears would be true, which is if 8 RSO units, again, I'm just making up numbers, are demolished, then 8 units in the bigger project must essentially be the same size, bedroom count, not necessarily, I don't know about square footage, that same bedroom count and the same rent. And then stabilized, meaning you raise your rent once a year at 3 or 4% or whatever the annual rent increase amount is in the project. And what again I am advocating for is that number of units would be in addition to the required covenanted affordable units required to get the density bonus in the first place. That would be what I would advocate.
And then I raised that I'm unsure of that. I wouldn't vote against this because the intent is there to not lose units, but providing building housing, whether it's market rate or affordable, adds to the housing stock and puts downward pressure on rents because it's more supply, and it also just eases the pressure of rent everywhere. So restricting, developers, whether you love them or not, play a key role, even if they're making profit, in providing enough housing for the city. So I think the more that we I don't want to say this negatively, but the more you pile it on, the less likely developers are going to be playing the game, and it's going to make it worse. So I think there's a balance there, not to give too much of the farm away and not to ask too much. And to me, adding one and the other, just because I know developers, it's adding a lot. Because I think if you're demolishing 8 and you have to replace 8, that seems fair. But,
well, I'm not.
That's my opinion.
Personally interested in fairness. I'm personally interested in conserving the character of our community, and that includes the people who live here. Meaning, I've seen too many of my neighbors become homeless because, I mean, John, you live in a single family zone. You're not seeing the same thing I'm seeing in a multifamily zone.
So what I would say to that is, I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because if you have a non-historic fourplex that's falling apart in a commercial area that has a higher density, so I think it's, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It feels like you're conflating issues, which I agree with as well. So I would say, how do we write that without having, except in this condition, to do this, and these are the intents, where I think the core intent is not to lose affordable housing.
No, the core intent of SB 330 was to, not to lose existing, but then adding to the total. I mean, in other words, what is the point of it just being a wash if what we're trying to find is more affordability and housing?
So,
and also, I might add, I mean, we've all heard this trickle down, we used to call it Reaganomics, the trickle down theory of now, if you build a lot of housing, other housing will get cheaper, may or may not be true. There's no proof. There's no proof.
That's wrong. You could only, like Sydney, Australia did a major big boom in housing and saw rents on average come down across the city about 30%. And it was one of the highest cost cities in the globe. additionally, we've already seen rents come down about 15% in Los Angeles, and there's just tons of housing.
You mean because of the pandemic?
Because of reduced pressure on housing.
Right, whatever, but this is a moment in time.
Down, and we're seeing tremendous numbers, and we still haven't even seen the full flood of housing that's been built coming on. So, and if you look at all of the professional trade groups, they're all projecting continuing decline in rents. We're seeing it in Seattle. We're seeing it in San Francisco. Actually, San Francisco's had a larger decline than even Los Angeles. So there is actual data, and I can pull the numbers on the studies for you, that if you dramatically increase your overall housing supply, even at market, it will bring average rents down in response.
So the way I see it is the developer has to provide the same number of RSO plus affordable units as there were before, and then he can add additional units. So we're getting the same plus more housing, which will be at market rate. But that means is the people who were there before are housed, and there's new housing available for more people. So that should, in effect, provide more housing for everybody and drive rents down.
So what I'm hearing, this is what I have for so far for the motion, and this is unamended based on this conversation. UNC Planning Zoning Committee recommends that the UNC Governing Board write a community impact statement in support of the 3 pending council motions that address the retention of RSO housing. Council numbers X, Y, and Z. Council file numbers. UNC's opinion that the RSO count be maintained in addition to the required affordable units for that developer, that the developer is proposing in return for density incentives under any city or state program. So that's the motion.
Well, that's the opposite of what you want, right?
I know it is. I'm just typing at the pleasure of the committee.
And I'm raising, so I'm making one more comment. We can't assume, and this is the problem I have also, John, with the idea from the city attorney, apparently you as well, is that if it's 8, it should be 8. Those 8 families, individuals and families, also in theory have the right of return, but not all of them would be, I mean, in other words, if to get the incentives, 3 of the units are now ELI, extremely low income, and they are covenanted, and you can't have them unless you qualify through the housing department. So you have 8 families. They're the part of the missing middle or workforce families, right? They're not going to qualify for the ELA. So how do you pick 5 of the 8 and where the other 3 families go? I'm just making up numbers, but they're not, those people are not necessarily going to qualify. They may not be able to use their right of return if there's only 8. If it's not that we're building 8 right of return RSOs plus 3 ELIs, if I'm saying that right. So I mean, it's very complicated. I'm not going to say it's not.
Well, if you're only going to do the 8 replacement RSOs, they have no problem with their right of return. But the developer should not necessarily be able to only tag the most extreme low income and therefore be able to get away with the smallest number of units, which is the pattern we're seeing in project after project.
Well, that's what we're seeing over here for sure.
The RSO replacements would not necessarily qualify as extreme low income. They would be RSO replacements based on whatever the calculation from SB 30 language requires.
Well, again, SB 30 requires 1-to-1. They just did SB 30 is statewide, 330. It didn't include a look at LA TOC.
But SB 30 does not specify it has to be qualified extremely low income. It says
Correct.
They have to be protected units replaced, and they have to have a right of return if the families want to come back.
Correct. That's what SB 330 says. Correct. So that's where we run into this difficulty.
I would guess that, you know, smart as you are, Laura, I would hope that the state legislatures would have flagged that as saying, what happens if, you know, they're up here and then the new units are down here and they can't go back. There has to be some mechanism. It also seems like that's a collateral issue, not collateral. It's a adjunct issue that could be addressed with policy and verbiage. but doesn't necessarily mean just make more units. So I think we're.
Centine wants to say something.
Yeah, I feel like those 8 units, it regardless of if they try to go with the ELI, the extremely low income units, that would be in addition to those 8 units. Like it doesn't, because it's, you can't sub out those 8. If all 8 of those folks want to come back, they have to be able to come back, period.
Right.
There's no like, oh, well, we're offering 3 ELI units, so sorry, 8 people, you can't come back, or they have to give them one of those ELI units. But that doesn't even work. So they would just get, they would have to. So if they want to try to build less affordable units by adding the ELI, it's on you. You can do that, but you don't get to give any of those 8 folks the boot because they have the right of return.
And then, and what if I'm a wealthy person that just so happens to be renting a $400 unit? Do I get a right of return to go back to a $400 unit, even if I don't qualify for it? I just lucked out. You know, you hear about in New York, actors have had the same stabilized unit ever, paying $200 a month.
I mean, I don't. It's from what I understanding of 330, it's right of return to those units, and I don't think it's, you don't have to, it's not an income qualifying thing. It's if you live there, you have the right to return to that unit if it gets demolished and rebuilt.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can I just,
so it's separate from.
so just to give you guys some context, Nandasi, which is the neighborhood council just to our east, the north area.
We'll go with the
anyway, the area just to our east, their community impact statement is they want to see a 2-to-1 replacement of RSO units. So just pointing out, they're not even good on 1-to-1. They want 2-to-1 because they have seen even more than we have of major displacement in the areas primarily west of USC. You know, so going west from Vermont to Western, major displacement of hundreds, I think, at this point, of families. So there, which is not pertinent, but I'm saying I understand, John, the fear, reminding you that this is not an impact on 100% affordable projects.
Yeah.
So maybe, I mean, I think we need to take something forward to the board, and I feel like we're going to have the same conversation again tomorrow night. But what is it that we want to take forward to the board? So
I think we are conflating what's there and who gets to come back and the affordable unit. So I have a paraphrasing right here of SB 330. It says bans demolition of affordable and rent controlled units unless they are replaced or tenants get first right of return. But it says, is it replaced by the equivalent? It's almost like you replace it with the equivalent, or it's not clear. Okay, so what is the legislative intent? What did each person who voted for it up in Sacramento think? Who knows? I don't know what's in their minds. You know, what might have been in their mind is the same thing that can be in our mind tomorrow night, which is, oh my God, it's 10:30 at night. I want to go home. Right? Yeah. I mean, who knows what was in anybody's mind? They might have voted yes just to be done. On topic. Yeah, no, I am on topic. So so again, my personal thing is that if a developer is asking to add 2 or 3 stories because they don't count the mezzanine level as a story, but when you live next door to it, it's a story. If they're asking to have very little open space, even though we're a park poor region, so where's everybody, you know, open space in the home is gone and there's no place to go. They're asking to reduce their setbacks. They're casting shade on everybody. Why are we giving this to them without a good amount of units and not just the minimum? And so if you're saying the minimum is now the replacement, I mean, what the city attorney is now saying, it's just an opinion. It's not been accepted by city council, let's be clear. The city attorney is saying the number would be the number of RSO units
is the biggest number that he would recommend the city say is the right number. But he's interpreting the law to say that may be what it means. And I am saying that doesn't do us a lot of good here in UNNC. We want to have a gain in affordability, not a net the same, and certainly not a net loss.
I can speak a little bit to SB 330. My organization actually was a sponsor on that bill. And it's definitely not meant to, it's meant to preserve, it's a preservation piece, and it's not meant to provide density benefits. So I'm pretty sure that the nature of the bill is that let's make sure that we're preserving those units if you're tearing down and build something else up. And if you want to take advantage of the density bonus by building more, it's definitely affordable units. That's the part that's a separate entity. And so kind of essentially what the motion as written, John, that you mentioned seems to be about right. But I will point out that it is a real issue to provide penciling out projects. If there is a certain point where that density that if the need to the necessary amount of affordable projects, and if you want to take advantage of the density bonus, and so kind of essentially and so that was a case, and so a session where it was like a 50% as written.
You froze.
Bonus where 50% beautiful, big same amount of affordable projects and buildable. And so that was a case with inclusion too high. The result will be that no projects don't get built, in short. So there is a sensitivity around that, but I think in the case of this case, that it's not meant to be, the preservation is not meant to be part of any additional density bonus that you get.
Yeah, I agree. I think the issue that Laura, you're speaking of affects certain neighborhoods, your neighborhood, unfortunately. And I think that can be resolved through review processes and what the incentives are. But so I'm so
okay. Two of you guys are talking. By the way, two of you are talking.
I thought Constantine started. I stopped. I'm sorry.
It's that it's not meant to be the preservation is not meant.
Can I make a short?
Yep. Yes, Dem. Uh-oh. Oh, wait, is it? Do you want to?
No, Dem is still here. I'm still here. Okay, can we see what you kind of drafted, John?
Yes. So this has not been made yet. This is just a suggestion. Right. So I'm going to put suggestion. Demetrius, you want to say something?
I just would turn the whole thing around backwards and say if a developer wants bonus conditions, then he should be required to replace all demolished units, protected demolished units, plus an X number of affordable units.
That's what we have.
Decided.
That's what we have as the suggested motion.
Just to
yeah, that is what we have. Okay, I hope it's not my internet that's causing everybody else's problem.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, well, I would make this motion. I don't know if we're losing everybody else at this point, but I would make this motion.
So Laura's going to make this motion.
Yeah, so are you writing that or me?
I am.
Okay. And John, I'm assuming you're not seconding.
I'm not unsupportive of it. I think there's nuance of it, but we're not legislatures, we're suggestors.
Right.
So Constantina, you want to make a comment or you want a second? Second? Great. Great.
Okay.
I think we've talked this out pretty well. I think this says it all. I think we should just call the vote.
Fine with
Sounds good to
me.
me.
Okay.
Is Jasmine
Okay,
voting yes or
Jasmine.
raising her hand?
So Jasmine's up. I'm up.
I'm voting yes.
Okay.
Demetrius is up. Constantine, you want to vote for your motion?
Bruce is up. Just have to go to the bathroom.
Brittany's up. Michael, you're the absentee right now.
You can see.
Okay, Michael, you in?
I'm listening.
Okay.
Okay,
Very
so,
interesting conversation, but I'm not going to vote.
Okay.
I can't support your position.
Yeah, okay, approved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, 1 abstained. Or you're an abstain, Michael, or against?
Hold on. Jesus, I'm sorry, guys. I'm moving around.
I think he said he's not.
Am I there?
voting.
Yeah, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
I've been listening, but I can't agree.
Okay.
So I'm not going to vote. I wouldn't vote no.
I'm with you on the ambivalence, Michael, but again, we aren't legislating, we're suggesting, and that will all come out in the wash.
Yeah, I'm just going to abstain. I think that's the cleanest path.
I want to support affordable housing anyway, I guess. I'm not gonna vote
I understand.
Great.
Okay. So the next item, thank you, everybody. The next item on the agenda is the Planning and Zoning Committee mission and goals. I'm going to share the screen on what we have, I hope. Okay. I don't know why it is so difficult to find stuff to share the screen, but here we go. So basically, Planning and Zoning Committee's mission statement is that first paragraph. It was adopted a long time ago, if you can see it. Our current mission statement is that the Planning and Zoning Committee works on development proposals, planning department rules and regulations, code enforcement, and long-range planning. Then for some reason it goes on to say it's an active committee which meets twice monthly. This group addresses every planning and zoning matter which affects UNNC. So that's what the mission statement that was approved, I don't know, back in the early 90s. Then further, the committee is described in the UNNC standing rules as one, it deals with land use issues. 2, it interfaces with developers and community regarding new development. 3, it handles historic preservation issues. So I wrote below that because I was thinking, what do we do also? So currently we provide ongoing land use training to our stakeholders in the governing board. So, John and I have been running every once in a while, we bring you all together just to learn about ZMIS or learn about this. We've been doing training. And then we also, almost every other UNNC board retreat, obviously we did not even have one this year. We've been doing the Planning 101 training for our board. Like tonight, we engage in the evaluation of an advocacy for affordable housing, but maybe that's just for housing, I don't know. We've added, it's not just that we handle historic preservation issues, but maybe 2 years ago, we added that we try to, people come to us because we don't necessarily know what people are doing, but we'll review potential historic cultural monument nominations or advanced summaries and might make a recommendation to support the designation of a property within our footprint. So, we'll review that material in advance. And if we do support the designation of property, we will so vote and go to the Cultural Heritage Commission and to City Council to testify. Example would be the recently, like 2 weeks ago,
That's already
designated
covered in number 3, though.
part.
Above.
Now, well, historic preservation issues is a broader thing. We literally
so it's in
voted
there.
to add
Oh,
this
yeah.
thing.
All,
It's a
all
part
we've
of
done
it.
is
Okay, you guys are interrupting. We've created a procedure that requires that people bring us in writing the summary or the nomination itself for us to review before we vote to support. It's a procedure that we've adopted. I will be specific, in October of 2018. And in association with the thing that took forever and was just designated, that's building on the corner of St. Andrews and Venice, the Streamline Moderne Art Deco building. So we've adopted this as a procedure. So I'm saying, what do we do? And then last but not least, we've been spending a huge amount of time working with the planning department and other city officials of late, regarding the implementation of concerns and issues with new planning tools, overlays, and regulations. And I can't, John, I don't know, can we estimate the hours we've spent on that in the last year?
No.
A huge amount of our time.
Laura,
Yeah,
I'm laughing because of the way you emphasized huge.
huge. I know, it's like somebody who used to be president, isn't that what he said? Huge. As if it doesn't have an H on it. Anyway, so the question becomes, do the things we really do, are they in at all any conflict with our mission statement? Do we need to update the mission statement? That's all I'm asking. You know, I mean, for tomorrow night, what do we want to do? Or do we want to just essentially make 1, 2, 3, put, and then this bullet point on HCM on nominations under number 3, and then 4 would be land use training. 5 would add something about advocacy for housing, especially affordable housing. I should have put all housing. And then the last one would be works with the planning department. I mean, in other words, do we want to do a whole lot more work on this document for tomorrow night? And am I missing anything?
I'm trying to, everything that I'm thinking of kind of vaguely falls into some of the thing, one of these categories. Just trying to think of, you know, where do the trees fall in place? I think it's anything.
No, the trees have morphed over to, actual trees have morphed to the environmental committee.
Okay, even though we talked about them tonight.
No, we talked about them tonight, but that was in terms of
Landscaping is
conditions.
often part of a developmental project. So anything tree landscaping that's part of a developmental project is still in our mission right there.
Yeah, you're right.
And I don't think our mission statement has to itemize everything we do and the process. It states the broad boundaries that we operate in.
I think it might be worthwhile putting something in there that we are actually trying to get this is our community to input their concerns to the council. That's it. That the big thing is the liaison between the community and the larger city council. That's the biggest thing that you do.
Yeah. It's kind of the purpose of the whole neighborhood council in general.
That's right. Yeah. But the fact that, to me, it's getting the community involvement is really important as part of the mission of the Planning Commission. Facilitate community involvement. That's what you do.
But I think actually more, maybe that, okay, that the group addresses every planning and zoning matter which affects UNNC in a manner to represent the desires of its community.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Give me a moment because I'm now working on two thoughts.
That's fine.
Okay, so then this committee addresses every planning and zoning matter which affects UNNC. What did you say after that, Chris?
In a manner that best represents the community or the wishes of the community,
The concerns and issues of the community.
something to that effect.
Yeah, I don't think we always best represent the wishes of our community, because if we were to do that, we would be demanding lots of parking that is against. No. I mean, again, we try very hard to stick to not objecting to things that are by right, if I'm saying that right. You know, if the maximum number of parking spaces on Crenshaw Boulevard a development can have is 46, we're not going in and whining that we really want 67 parking spaces, right? I mean, you know, so we're not
right.
So we're not best representing the wishes or desires of our community.
Something to express.
But by right, we don't actually have the ability to weigh in, but we can weigh in on the things that we can weigh in. We're weighing in a manner to represent the desires of our community, or there are stakeholders. That's what
of the community.
Okay, so again, I'm just trying to tell you, Chris, sadly, not true. Truly, it's not true. So what's a better way to say that? I mean, and John knows this. I cannot go to City Hall, the hearings, and merely represent things, the wishes and desires of the community, because sometimes those wishes and desires are about things we have no influence over. Example, wireless facilities where people are concerned about radiation. We hear that all the time. We can't do it. I mean, so it's not wishes and desires.
Because it's not part of the actual issue that you're addressing. That's extraneous to the role of this particular committee.
No, what I'm saying is
green apples or red apples.
I'm just saying, for a mission statement, I don't think we can use the phrase wishes and desires.
Oh, well, no, I just put concerns.
Yeah, I didn't hear him say wishes and desires, issues, the concerns, yeah.
I mean, we meet, we make recommendations, they get voted on, they go to governing board, they vote on them, and then we take those views up to other agencies. We're representing our community as best we can with the process available to us in that democratic.
So it's not desires and wishes, it's concerns.
I like concerns.
Oh.
Concerns is fine with me.
Or interests, concerns and interests.
That's fine. Okay, so what about then this little list below that started out with our standing rules?
So Laura, is there a way that we can, because it seems like there's different chunks here.
There are different, yes, there's 3 chunks. That's how.
Can we mush them into like a mission statement, then a vision statement, and then make it so it's not like an accretion of, because some of these, as Chris pointed out, could be infused. I know it's difficult to wordsmith in a meeting.
I know.
Like this.
I hate to say this, but while we've been talking, I've been trying to fuse them, and now my stupid Microsoft Word is doing things. So I fused the historic preservation stuff. I changed the number 5 to be advocacy of housing, especially affordable housing. So, because we really do look at all housing, like you said. So obviously we do not need to deal with land. We don't need this one at all, because we've just said it. So I mean, my point is, where do we put these what are at best now bullet points below? Do you want me to just say add historic preservation, land use training up in this mission statement as little one-word things?
What if we got concepts down, because wordsmithing I know takes months with my committee. Can we just take the concepts down, and then I'm happy to take.
I thought that's what I'd done.
Oh, okay. I actually like writing things. I'm happy to take the concepts and kind of make them into a cohesive treaties list.
Right, but we have to have this by tomorrow night. Well, we don't have to. I mean, that's sort of my arbitrary, I suppose. Not really arbitrary, because we were supposed to do this 4 months ago.
I don't think we should have them for tomorrow night. I think this is too. I think we need to take our time and and maybe take this list and come back to the next meeting.
Guess what?
What?
How is it that mommy here gets to get away with not doing what I've asked every other committee chair to do? I can't do that. I have to perform. I mean, seriously. I sent out an email to every committee chair saying, I need it now. Hurry up. I mean, we can provide it as a draft, but the real question is, do we do anything other than this? I mean, why are we panicking?
Because we thought the first one was a bit bold, but that's about it. I mean, you either can compress it to incomprehensibility, or you can make 7 pages long paragraphs.
Well, I've got 1 page, 177 words. It doesn't seem too long.
I wouldn't go any longer. I wouldn't necessarily have to make it super shorter.
Yeah, I think we've hit everything in here. I can't think of any. I'm thinking about all the things we've done over the years. I'm trying to think of examples and where they fit, and so far everything's fit somewhere.
Right, because I mean, if for example we comment on the housing element, that comes under this number 4.
How about I'm thinking about the renaming of Crenshaw. Review community proposals that affect the public sphere or something, like
Yes.
When public
Yes,
works.
all proposals, because you know what? Come to think of it, that affect it's called public realm.
Realm, that's better than sphere.
Right, and that would include therefore the Crenshaw streetscape plan, the exposition streetscape plan, the renaming or co-naming, the co-naming proposal for Crenshaw. So that would be good. Those are all proposals that affect the public realm.
I like that because we often deal with private property rights and regulation around them, but we also want to address things. That whole list you just said, whether it's trees on the street, sidewalk repair, the HPOZ sidewalk issue on Park, all that.
All of it. I mean, we're not the only committee necessarily to address these things.
We're not saying that we are.
Right. So the Economic Development Committee might want to review proposals.
Make another line item for the mission statement, which is to balance current community land use against future development, because that seems to be a large part of what we actually do. It includes
would that be, see, if you look at the committee, the number 1, interfaces with developers and community community members.
Yeah, but that's just
regarding with an eye toward balancing their respective interests. Is that what you're really trying to say?
Well, there's always a tension between what exists and what people want to do with it.
Yep.
And there are people who want to preserve it. There are people who don't care, and there's people who want to tear it down, build something different entirely.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do, and half the things we talk about are balancing what exists with what people want to have happen.
Yes, well, that's, I think, what it says generically, number one. I guess I should point out that in our bylaws, so we're not changing our bylaws, one of the things we do, UNNC does, is advocate for historic preservation. That's in the bylaws. No, which is to say.
We've got a mission statement. The mission statement is balancing these concerns. It doesn't matter if it's keeping it the way it is.
What I'm asking you, Demetrius, is
figure out what to do.
I understand. I heard you loud and clear. What is it that I wrote that doesn't say what you said?
It's very similar. I think it can be compressed into a shorter sentence effectively.
Okay.
I have an issue with developers. I like to say proponents of change, whether it's a CUP for liquor, who would maybe not be a developer, but there's other things besides developers that are proposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, applicants.
I don't know what the pan.
Okay. So you want to call this proponents
and future use
or change?
Future changes of use.
Interfaces.
That's what it's all about.
Propose change of use proposals and community, something like that. That's a little passive, but yeah. Who is there a word for a proponent of change? It's very.
Look, I think you do again.
Change.
No,
That's a joke. That was sort of a Marvel comic joke. Sorry.
Balance current community land use
Yeah.
against possible future changes in use. We'll have to think something else, but
Okay.
I don't like the word against. I don't like the word against. That suggests that everything's like a winner and loser. But
okay. Well, first of all, why don't we say it a different way? What this phrase? Okay, the phrase interface came from somewhere, but don't we rather bring together?
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, noting that some of this is a copy and paste from our documents.
Yeah, I like bringing together proponents of change with the community members regarding. I think just and then get rid of regarding new development with an eye towards balancing their respective interests. Just get rid of that.
Fine.
Get rid of regarding. There you go, Demetrius. You got your shortness.
Instead of bring together, why not just say unite?
Well, can I just say, here's the thing. I don't want to put this in the mission statement, but my vision for how, I try to run an organization, be it this one or any other, my vision is always that we build consensus. We have to do, we collaborate and we build consensus. That's the goal. We often end up with compromise. So consensus is everybody thinks they got what they want. Compromise is everyone thinks they didn't get what they want, but they're accepting what they got. And what we're trying not to ever be is the U.S. Congress,
Winner and losers.
Where a tyranny of the majority, even if the majority is won by one person. So
how about build consensus between proponents for change and community members?
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay, how about, well, you're saying bring together and build consensus?
No, replace bring together with build consensus. Build consensus between proponents for change with community, between proponents for change and community members with an eye toward balancing their respective interests.
Perfect. Okay.
I think that's good because that's a lot of what you do.
It is
well, it's a lot of what I try to do. I mean, I hope UNNC will continue to do that for years to come.
Let's keep moving on.
All right, next one.
So do you think, so for example, did we build consensus on this or did we compromise?
I think we got consensus.
I think we got
I
consensus.
think we're good. They're both C words.
All right.
I move that we adopt
Adopt.
this as a draft,
Okay.
and give any committee member between tonight and tomorrow night
Yeah, that'll be
a
hard.
voice to
Send copies.
suggest changes,
Um,
or if anyone has time to wordsmith tomorrow.
well, no, I mean, can I just say, as long as we show up with something tomorrow night, we can tell the board that our planning and zoning committee has an adopted mission statement previously. This is our working draft on an update, and please forgive us. We want to wordsmith it a little bit more, but here's what we're working on. I think that's okay. It's just not showing up at all with it would seem rather, what's that word? Hypocritical of me.
Cavalier.
That too. But hypocritical. Okay, are we, but it, I don't know how to put this all in the chat.
I am doing John moves to approve the draft of the mission statement as written and reviewed.
But as a draft.
I said draft by the committee.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. So I think I know how to spell.
I'm gonna stop the share because I'm getting nasty
I
little.
don't know if I'm spelling Demetrius right. All these Greek names in here.
It's Russian.
No, it's Latin.
Okay.
I call this.
Jasmine has her hand up.
Oh, Jasmine.
Sorry, I was just voting yes.
Oh, okay.
I think Jasmine just called the question.
Okay. All right, I'm voting yes.
Okay, there we go. Brittany or Michael, any opinion on that?
Michael voted yes.
And Brittany, yes, we have a unanimous approval.
Okay, so I've now completely lost track. Where are we? All right, so where we are is at that fees thing where you said I already gave away the store. Is that right, John?
I said you stole your own thunder.
Or that.
So basically, I'm going to give a synopsis, is
Okay.
that the fee structure was skewed heavily, that developers pay their full bore to get, if they wanted favor from the planning department or review, they have to pay for it. And then the scale slid down to common folk like ourselves, that we're doing in addition to our house. We pay a little bit less because no one wants to pay the full regulatory review when we're just people trying to get our lives done. And then the scale went even further down for appeals. So if I'm a person living next door to a deep-pocketed developer and I want to appeal their project, the city is not penalizing me and is in fact requiring me to pay very, very little to issue that appeal. What has since happened, that was the original, that's the proposed that we saw a few weeks ago, that had that general theme going, where
Right.
there's a full payment, partial payment, and almost no payment.
Right.
And now they've changed their tune, probably because there's a massive deficit, that even people, like for example, in the HPOZ, you have to pay, if you want to get a permit for something, you now have to pay for the full review of that part of the permit for HPOZ. So if I'm putting a $100,000 addition on my home, I might have to pay $10,000 in fees just to get it reviewed by the HPOZ. And that's what the issue is. And I have an opinion on that, but that's not my place to issue it right now.
Okay, well, I'm gonna see. I'm counting some zeros. Okay, hang on. So first I'm gonna show what happened on appeal fee. Can you guys see my cursor? Because it's so hard to see this chart. So do you see where I'm looking at 1901B number 3? So this is appeals fees. the city, so I'm going to go back and forth. So this red number here, in the year they evaluated 210 people, maybe fewer people, but maybe some of them did more than one. 210 people filed appeals across the entire city to object to a land use case near them in their neighborhood somehow, usually. And they paid $89. So that's this figure here. It looks like 99 if I don't blow it up, but if I blow this up too much, you can't.
It looks like 89. It looks like 89.
Okay, whoops. And now
I think the key thing is that it costs the city 99 times more.
well, hey, that I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
So that was the prior fee. The planning department, recognizing that they should charge a little more, recommended that it go up to $161. This is not including some other fees, so that would be about $200 total. So this right now the 89 is really $110. You know, there's extra fees. And they're saying that it would cost $16,000 for them to process the appeal. I will say personally, rather snarkily, that is mostly because they spend a huge amount of time defending themselves instead of actually reading the appeals and every once in a while saying, maybe they're right, and just conceding. So they spend an awful lot of time creating PowerPoint presentations to show the next level of decision maker and justifying every action. I'm being cynical.
Yes.
But anyway, the CAO on February 24th issues a new recommendation rejecting the planning department and saying, nope, even individuals, residents down the street from you should pay $16,000. So that's obviously what's going to grab the attention of most people who are looking at this across the city. But UNNC also has another concern. And as John said, it's this historic, here we are, 1901F, fees for historic related applications. So the city had a tradition of having reasonable fees. And I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. Reasonable fees for people who own houses in HPOZs, I mean, individuals. And also there's another one here, number 11, again, where my clearance is, for people who are doing a renovation project on their house. They were not charged very much money comparatively for the Office of Historic Resources to review the building permits. That's a separate fee. It was $1,000. And they're now, the CAO is now saying, no, I want to charge $3,600 because that's the full amount. And in the HPOZs, a certificate of appropriateness, instead of being $1,200 or $1,700, is now being recommended at $5,700. So UNNC took a look at the original recommendations a month ago and decided, everything was reasonable, and therefore we took no action. Now it doesn't appear reasonable at all. And what was also unreasonable is that even though the planning department had done a very good job of sharing their proposal with the world, so they started sharing this original document on December 2nd for a February 16 hearing. So people had plenty of time to look this through, and most of the commentary on the city council management site had been about the appeal fee, because people were actually objecting that it shouldn't go from 89 to 160 or so. They thought that was even unaffordable for some people. That, as one person testified, if you're just a $15 an hour person, that's 2 days work just to file the appeal. So we didn't take action. Now it appears that we should. And I think we have two actions. One, that this is just insane, that no one would ever want to come to an HBOZ to propose any work. I mean, John, you had said something about that, but it's also so inappropriate that at the last minute, the CAO overrules the proposal that had been circulated widely, and neighboring councils and residents didn't even have much of a chance to comment on this. The only reason there's now some time is because at the city council committee hearing yesterday, Tuesday, their technology failed. And because the audio on the city council phone wasn't working, they had to cancel the meeting, and it's been rescheduled for April 6th. And that is the only reason this is still open for our comment.
So I'm going to move that the UNNC Planning and Zoning Committee, I'll type this, recommend.
Can I stop the share?
Yep. Recommends.
Oops, you know what? We lost a few people. And
We lost
Chris. And we've gained James.
But here comes Chris is back.
We gained James Masonette.
Yeah. So I'm going to say UNNC Planning and Zoning Committee recommends that the UNNC Governing Board write a letter with two components.
CIS, Community Impact Statement.
Write a CIS.
Or do a resolution. We could do it either way.
Write a CS or pass a resolution. Sorry, with the following. Sorry, this chat box is difficult to type in. With the following.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys. I should explain for those who are new to these meetings that we use the chat to literally record our motions, so that later on, when we have to actually have them and do at the board a board action certificate, the motion is just a copy and paste, so it makes it so much easier. Our new procedure in Zoom.
I'm going to say we oppose the CAO recommendations that the planning fees for non-developer.
Okay, we oppose the major increase, the untenable increases in fees for individual appeals, and fees for historic preservation related functions as being unreasonable.
Needlessly onerous.
Onerous is a good word.
You know how I feel about hyperbole. Why don't we just say we oppose the fee increases and leave it at that?
Yeah, but is it what? Well,
you want me to write it in all
well,
caps?
We don't oppose all fee increases. We were okay with the minor increases that the planning department had raised.
Okay, for the
you can say that UNNC had been comfortable with the proposed minor or reasonable increases that the planning department had originally proposed, but opposes the CAO's proposal that all fees should reflect full cost recovery, given that would make appeals and historic preservation activities potentially onerous.
So I think we have the things where we're suggesting, which is oppose the fees, the large percentage fee increases for appeals and historic preservation related projects, and the process by which the CAO
put this in at the last minute.
Did not allow for ample, for not even ample, for reasonable response time from the
right. And then the other thing that people were saying, do we want UNNC to say this? Meaning people, I've now seen a lot of communications was that in particular, South LA would be more impacted than perhaps other areas. I don't know, that doesn't sound right, but there's an equity issue in this as well. In terms of, you know, I don't want to say this in a letter or a CIS, but obviously a person who lives in Hancock Park may be able to absorb a $3,600 building permit review fee by OHR in a way that somebody who lives in Jefferson Park could not.
Maybe that's related to
Equity.
the size of the project, or I'm not sure. So
Well,
I'm going to add to this finding that the fees should not punish, disincentivize, or something.
Yeah. Well, they should.
I like the
mean,
word disincentivize.
Yeah. What is it? What is a public benefit? It's a public. It's also it's a citizen protection, which is the appeals, and a public benefit, which is the HPOZ.
Right. It's that. Well, it's also about compliance. I mean, I think we'll just see people not applying for things, just doing it and hoping they don't get caught.
Getting the maximum of pork for the minimum amount of squeal.
Well, I think it will lead to a tsunami of unpermitted
Yeah,
work.
I agree.
And that does not serve the city well. We go back to the era where every project was rolling out without permits and people were living in illegal garages and addition, you know, it was substandard work. And we just don't want to go down that path where we make it so onerous that people avoid the process altogether and the city is not served by that outcome.
Right. And we had also, when our HPOZs, at least in our community, were established, I mean, we did an awful lot of legwork and outreach in our communities to get buy-in, right, for having HPOZs. And part of that buy-in was that it's not going to cost people an arm and a leg to participate in the HPOZ. So to, again, end up with these, I mean, I don't mind a really high fee for someone who is building a new duplex in a multifamily zone, but HPOZ, and they have to go through, lots and lots of review at the HPOZ level, along with perhaps some other, but they're doing a 2 or 3 or 400,000 or more project. But
so I'm gonna read what I have.
Yeah.
UNC Planning and Zoning Committee recommends that the UNC Governing Board write a CIS or pass a resolution with the following components. I don't like that word, but whatever. Oppose the CIO recommendations for fees for large percentage fee increases. Sorry, I'm editing as I go. For large percentage fee increases for appeals and historic preservation related projects, and 2, the process by which the CAO did not allow for a reasonable response time from the community, finding that the fees should not disincentivize citizen involvement or public benefits related to public benefits related to HPOZs, or
well, it should be HPOZ or historic resources or something like that.
Okay, well, I'll type that later.
Yeah.
Or incentivize illegal unpermitted activity.
Very good.
Cool. Good.
Very good.
I'll move that. Who wants a second?
I'll second.
Who was that?
Demetrius.
Okay, I call that vote. Any other
Yeah, because
discussion?
it's 9:04.
Any other discussion about that? I think that's pretty clear.
Okay.
Okay, let's call the vote. Everyone raise their hand or do whatever.
Right.
Okay, Brittany, Michael, Jasmine, Constantine. Oh, there you go. And then James, if you wish to vote, please do. Okay, so I'm going to call James an abstention unless he unmutes shortly. So we have all 1, 2, 3.
Here's James.
Alright.
Here's James.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, I vote yes.
Okay, great. So we have our original 8 people from 2 hours ago. I want to remind you to note that. So we have 9 yes.
Okay.
Unanimous. Great.
Okay, cool. I don't think we have any other items.
Fabulous, it's 9:05.
I know, not so bad. Let's go.
I know, it's good.
Laura, thank you. I know your life is a thing these days, so thank you for this meeting. Thanks for everybody who showed up and contributed. This is a robust conversation, and I hope everyone comes back. I know we have a lot of repeat people here, and that's great.
Right. So, John, will you stay behind as everyone leaves for a
Yeah.
minute?
Constantine, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Oh.
All right,
Excited to be.
Sorry, this is Ginge. Thanks for taking
Thanks,
my vote.
Austin.
And sorry I joined in late. I was following the agenda time and that was published, and I just want to listen in on the fireworks this year, but I guess I missed that.
No, that's
No,
tomorrow.
that's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow
that's
night, James.
That's tomorrow, and
Oh,
you're
okay.
probably correct in showing up at about 8:30 or 9 because it's going to be a late one. So
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
that's
Everybody.
tomorrow. Different,
Night, everybody.
game, same organization.
Night, Michael.
Night, Michael. Night, Chris.
Well, I'll see you guys. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay.
Night all.
Good night.
Night.
And can you stop recording?
I know.